I was fishing a couple years ago with a good friend, Brandon Naggs, when he coined the term, in relation to fishing, fields of gold. I had no idea what he was talking about at the time, but boy, was I about to get educated. His theory was that when the mat started to form, and it got that scuzzy green stuff on the top, kind of a golden color, almost to what's behind me, that neon green, that was the very best time to start throwing a frog. When the mat gets so thick and fibrous that it's almost impossible to even punch, a frog comes into play. The best thing about this strategy is that it typically starts about mid-August in our part of the world and only gets better as the season goes on. The areas start getting smaller as weeds start to die, and if you can find that real bright green with green weeds underneath, those fish start to stack underneath there. And as the season goes on, to the point where I've actually thrown a frog and you can hear it crunching through the frost on the top, it only gets better. So as the weeds continue to die, that mat often becomes the only really good cover for them. So you end up with lots of fish under there, and they're aggressive and competitive as well. The perfect scenario for frog fishing. One of the things I often share with people is later on in the season, as you're driving down the back roads, or sometimes even the highway, you'll see frogs jumping across the road. And at that point, I always tell them, grab your frog rod and get to the lake because they're moving. It's an annual transition into their wintering areas that gets the frogs moving, and the fish are aware of it. At that point, the fish can get so dialed into frogs that they won't hit anything else. You can be throwing a frog across the mat, you'll see a boil or a hit, and they'll leave an open spot, and you can throw whatever you want into that hole and they won't hit it, but on the next cast over it with a frog, boom, up they come. And not all mats are created equal. Sometimes you get the grungy stuff on top, but you have brown weed underneath, and that's just not the best cover for these fish. What you're looking for is the brightest of green on the top and still green weeds up underneath. And as the season goes on and the weeds underneath the mat thin out, it just means more and more fish will be in there. You can hit these spots during the day repeatedly. You can either stop and take a break, or else move on to another section and then come back later. The fish either regroup or resupply. There always seems to be fish there, and they always seem to be willing to bite. So if you're looking for consistent action and big fish later in the season, look for the fields of gold. And remember, if you're seeing frogs moving at night, get your butt to the lake.